Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know that you've got a lot of good information to share with everybody today, Judge Calloway. So we want to make the most of our hour together today. As a starting point, I want to welcome everybody to this Lunch and Learn with Judge Shelia Calloway, of the Judge of the Juvenile Court. Today's topic is juvenile crime and the juvenile justice system. And we welcome all of you. We thank you for being here. I want to make a shout out to my domestic bar family and friends out there. Woo! Thank y'all for being here and support WPC and Judge Calloway. We're excited to have your participation today. I also want to acknowledge a couple of our elected officials that are on. We've got school board member Anna Shepard on. Thank you for being present. And we've got our county clerk, Brenda Wynn, on. And we also have several of our board members of the Women's Political Collaborative. I want to invite and ask each and every one of you today, if you are not a member of the collaborative, to please join the organization. I don't see as many of my domestic bar friends in this organization as I would like to see. You need to know that we are very active in legislation. We monitor legislation that affects our families, our community. We advocate for those things that are good. We fight against those things that are not going to be helpful to us in our court system. And so your help and support would be awesome. So I encourage and invite you to sign up to be a member. Dues are $75 a year, and there are many benefits that come with that. You can join by going to WPCTN.com. And today we're going to have a very informative and fun chat with Judge Shelia Calloway. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I got to be fun and informative.
You know, you do a great job at that. You're one of the best people I know that can be fun and informative. So yeah, we're excited about it. So I don't want to take for granted that everybody here understands about juvenile court and exactly everything that goes on over there, because for such a small building, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of different areas and departments. So can you just give us an overview of juvenile court and what you all do?
Absolutely. And I just want to thank the Women's Political Collaborative for inviting me to do this. As you know, I love talking about juvenile court and all the things that we do. And it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, I always want to start off with a quote that I love to say. And it says, "The kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways." And I start with that because I want everyone to know that every child that I meet, that I talk to, that comes through our court system, they need love and support. And that's what our job is. What the statute says is what juvenile court has to do is found in the Tennessee Code annotated 37-1-101. And basically what it says is that it's my responsibility to take care of everything about that child, the wholesome, moral, provide whatever type of treatment, physical development of all the children that come within our department. And so we take all kind of cases. From a third of the cases that we do deal with our parentage, and these are kids who are born from unmarried parents. We start from day one. We do DNA testing on site. We go all the way through. Once we determine paternity, we determine who is the primary residential parent, who is the alternate residential parent. We also make a determination of how much time each parent should spend with their child, and we also set child support. And so anything that does with the custody of a child from an unmarried parent, we deal with. Another third of the cases that we deal with children who are alleged to have been neglected, abused, or dependent by their parents. These are those news stories that you hear about a parent who may have left a child in a car and they went inside to a store and went shopping, and hours on end and the child's still in the car. Or, you know, leaves the child at home, or someone who passes out from a drug overdose and their child's with them. These are our neglect and dependent abuse cases, and that's about another third of the cases that we handle. The final third of the cases that we handle deal with the juvenile and the juvenile's behavior. And so it's a small portion of the cases that we deal with. It's the kids who commit the crimes that you see on TV. It's also the children who, what we call status offenses, such as running away from home or violating curfew violations, and it's only a trouble because of their age. When I talk to people on a regular basis about what we do in juvenile court, what you could hear is about 2/3 of the cases that we handle deal primarily with the parent and the parent behavior. And so we have done a lot to make sure that we're putting positive programs in our courthouse to address parents and to make sure that parents are doing well. Because what we do know is that if the parents are struggling to raise their children, that is an adverse childhood experience. What adverse child experiences are, we call them ACEs, are basically problems that a child goes through before they're turned 18 that I guess mess with their brain development and their functioning. And what we have to remember is that when you talk about adverse childhood experiences and talk about what our children experience, any type of family dysfunction, abuse, neglect, affects a child negatively. And what we know based on the studies of adverse childhood experiences is that the higher or the more ACEs that you have, the more likely you're to have a lot of troubles as you grow up. And so what we're doing is we're trying to teach our parents in different ways on how their behaviors can affect the brain development of their children, and that they have to do a better job so that our children can grow up and do a better job. And so, when I think about the children, the parents and the children that we deal with, there are a lot of programs that we do. For instance, we have a parental assistance court. And what those are, it starts in our child support cases where the non-custodial parent, we are giving them whatever it is, whatever barriers it is that are preventing them from spending time with their child and paying their court-ordered child support, that we are helping them to remove those barriers, such as if it's job skills, if it's not being able to get a job because of a criminal record, if it's trying to get a driver's license. Our parental court specialists work to make sure that they are removing those barriers and to help them to become better parents and be a part of that child's life. On our neglect and dependence side, we have a safe babies court. And we were one of the first jurisdictions in Tennessee to have a safe babies court. But we primarily, these are for the children who are being removed from their families between the ages of 0 and 3, where we know at that time what the brain science again shows is that that's a critical time for brain development. And if they're going through traumatic experiences at that time, they need a lot of support and a lot of help. And so we're doing what we can to make sure that the parents are learning how to do what they need to do in order to regain custody of their children, and that we're providing good services and resources for those children. So those are just a handful of the things that we do on the parent side. We do a whole lot of stuff for our youth as well. We have a family recovery treatment court for both the family. If a family have lost children because of drug abuse, we have a recovery court. If a child or a youth is experiencing drug problems, drug abuse, we have a youth recovery court as well. We have a gang resistance intervention program court. And what we do is that for that court is for those youth who have been identified by the Metro Police Department as gang members. We are having them involved in a very highly intensive probation program with a group called GANG, which is Gentlemen and Not Gangsters. What you also will learn in juvenile court that we love acronyms. And so we throw little symbols around all the time. Just keep up with me. But our GRIP program works with our gang program to help our youth to overcome the barriers it takes to disassociate from a gang and to disassociate from the gang behaviors. We also have our Metro Student Attendance Court. Our Metro Student Attendance Court is primarily for all those students who are having issues with truancy, educational neglect, loitering during school hours, and it's all about making sure that we're removing barriers for them to stay in the school system. What we know is that children who are engaged and informed and active in their schools are going to be least likely to get in trouble in our communities. And so it is super important that we have good connections, good working with the schools so that we can provide and make sure that they are staying active and engaged in their schools. We also do youth court within the school system. And so for all of the attorneys that are on this line, we always need volunteers to help with our youth court. Our youth court basically is where we train students in 7 different high schools to actually be part of the school system. Part of the court system. So they actually hear real cases of youth that are in their school who have gotten a small minor charge. The people who are in youth court handle the cases. They serve as the attorneys for the state. They serve as attorney for the respondent. They serve as the court officer, the clerk, the caseworker that follows the case to make sure the child is doing everything else they're supposed to do. They also serve as the jury. The only adult position is the actual judge, and that's where we need a lot of help from the attorneys. But it is a wonderful rehabilitative program that's very restorative in nature, that allows the schools and the students in the school system to talk to their peers, to explain to them why their behaviors, disrupted the school and how they could do better. And it's very successful. Youth who go through statewide, who've gone through the youth court process, are 4%. 4% of them have come back ever again. So recidivism rate is 4%, which is amazing. And so we're very proud of our youth court, and it does a lot to help our youth in the city. We also have a new restorative justice program that is operated by Rafa Institute, the community-based organization. And again, it is felony cases, and it's an agreement that we've reached with the district attorney's office, the police department, the public defender, and the mayor's office, where we agree to certain types of felony offenses. It started off at aggravated burglary, but the good news is aggravated burglaries have gone down for juveniles over 80%. So a lot of kids aren't really breaking in people's houses, which is a wonderful thing. And so we had to expand it because we couldn't get enough cases to do restorative justice. And so we're doing a lot of the car burglaries, a lot of other felonies. And what they do is they talk to the person who was harmed during the offense. They talk to the child. They counsel on both sides separately until there's a good, appropriate time to bring them together. When they come together, they talk about the harm that was committed. They talk about who's responsible for curing the harm and how they do that. It is a successful program as well. We've had probably about 30 cases that are going through the process. The cases that have completed it completely, no one has come back and reoffended. And so these are the kind of things that we're doing in juvenile court so that we are making sure that youth crime stays down, that all of our youth have an opportunity to be productive citizens in our community. And so that was a quick, brief overview.
Yeah, that was great. And I want to let everyone know, because that is a lot of information, but it's all very helpful. So I want everyone to know that this Lunch and Learn is being recorded, and you will be able to find it on our website, WPCTN.com. As early as Monday of next week. So if you're a little bit like me and you're slowful at taking notes, and a distraction could come up here or there, just know that you will be able to go back and reference this a little later on. So thank you for explaining all those things, because I don't think people truly understand all of the moving parts that go on in juvenile court. And obviously today we're gonna hone in and focus a little bit on your delinquents side of things and juvenile crime. But I want to talk a little bit more about how ACEs plays in to juveniles and their behaviors and in the criminal justice system. What do you really find with juveniles that are coming through the criminal justice system, and what type of ACEs they have actually experienced, and what do you see there?
So there was a study that was done by the University of Tennessee Social Work School that talked about across the state of Tennessee, who were we locking up when we talk about children? And it gave some absolutely disturbing factors. Particularly 70% of the youth that we have locked up across the state have experienced a traumatic event. 30% of them have a diagnosed disability. 48% of them function below their academic grade level. 30% of them have a history of some type of physical or sexual abuse prior to their incarceration. And 65 to 70% of them have at least one diagnosed mental health disorder. And these numbers are super important to recognize who we as a state are saying it's okay to lock up. And it's not appropriate, and it's something that we've got to learn to move away from. Again, when we talk about adverse childhood experiences, one of my role models is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. And if you have time, look up her TED Talk, and she'll give you a brief summary about adverse child experiences and what it does to children and their brains. Basically, what's happening when you have a high number of adverse childhood experiences, then the trauma that you are undergoing affects a portion of your brain development. And so you literally are not developing the brain the same way as someone who does not have adverse childhood experiences. And so what's happening is we are damaging our children with things that we shouldn't be doing. And then we are holding them responsible for decisions that sometimes they don't have the capacity to make because they don't have the proper brain development. And so when you think about how adverse childhood experiences, makes a difference in our delinquent cases, when we do assessments of our youth, we do an adverse childhood experience assessment of some of the youth that come through the system. And the majority of them have a number of adverse childhood experiences. And the one part of their brain that it affects the most is the part of the brain that's the decision-making part. I didn't go to medical school. I don't know the names of all this stuff, but Dr. Burke-Harris can tell you, but it's the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that says, why young boys like to drag race and think that they can't be harmed. That's because their prefrontal cortex is not developed. I think about it all the time when I look at my child and I say, Trey, why, what made you do that? And he says, oh no.
Right.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
He can't connect.
Yeah.
He did in the decision and why he did that.
I have a 25-year-old that same answer I get all the time. I don't know.
and what the brain science shows, Stephanie, is that our prefrontal cortex on a normal basis, even if you don't have adverse childhood experiences, doesn't really fully develop until you're 25, 25 years old. I usually say for men, and I know we got a few men on here, that's about 40.
Yeah, that's not encouraging.
16, and they just bring the average to 25. Men, I had to say it. But, the issue is we are holding our youth, the statutes and the law allow us to hold our youth accountable to their actions based on the like as if they're adults, if they were able to make the same adult decisions. And I know you and Elizabeth spend a lot of time with one of our programs in detention, doing a book club with the youth at our detention facility.
Yeah, Latanya Todd also, yeah.
Tanya Todd and I appreciate y'all doing that and coming down and just, I guess we can't do it now, but coming down and being a part of our youth lives, because you see and you learn, it just takes people to take the time and the patience, the structure, the love to give to our youth to make a difference and to help them with that brain development.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say you definitely have an experience with them when you get to know them on a personal level, I guess, to the extent that we can with what we've done with the book club. And you really see there's so much in these children. Like, one of the things that's very difficult is there's so much potential. These are bright kids. I mean, they've done some things that cause them to be there and cause them to be there for a while. But they are very smart kids. They've got great thoughts. They contribute. They read these books. They contribute to the discussion and the conversation. They come up with ideas that we didn't even catch. We didn't think about. But here they are. They're in this environment. They're locked up. Their potential is lost in society. Like, we're not getting the benefit of who these kids can really be. And so, the question kind of becomes, because obviously there is a balance between someone committing an act that is unlawful and some kind of punishment. I don't really care to use that word as much, but obviously, there has to be some kind of repercussions to their actions. But with also balance in trying to really develop and grow and get them past that mistake, so that they're able to become good, productive citizens that we need out here in society. So, I mean, how do you really balance that in what you do in your cases that you hear?
You know what? And that goes, I think Avi has posted a question about restorative justice. And that just goes to show, we in the United States of America, the country that has one of the highest incarceration rates, we think about accountability in the wrong manner. We sometimes, for whatever reason, associate accountability with locking people up and making them think about what they did while they're in a lockup facility. Mm-hmm. That's not productive. That's not what changes people's behavior and changes their thought process. What works better is if we do more restorative justice, if we do more of the opportunity to sit down with people, help them to figure out what it was, the harm that was caused, and how they caused that harm. There are so many jurisdictions that have shown with restorative justice, both in the adult system and the juvenile system, that it really does work. The majority of the people who go through a restorative justice type program, the recidivism rates, or the rates that they come back again, are super low. And we get it wrong. The recidivism rates of people that we incarcerate are high. And they're high for a number of reasons, because you incarcerate them most of the time without any thought about why they did what they did or how it affects them or anything about that. And then when you incarcerate them, you take away their abilities to come back into the community and be productive, because now you've given them a felony charge. If they have something on their record, you tell them that they can't get housing at certain places. You tell them that you can't get jobs at certain places. And so there are all of these things that people who get incarcerated and get removed from that incarceration at some point are unable to do to be a part of our society. And so it's a lifelong punishment that we do on people. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what the crime is. It's a shame the way that we run our criminal justice system, and things are not going to get better until we start saying, I want justice, I want justice, I want people locked up. That's not always what justice is. And we've got to learn to better define. We can do it now with our juveniles, and we can show each and every time they go through a restorative justice program or some type of practice, or we divert them from the court system, we can show positively how pulling them out of the court system does so much better than keeping them in the court system. And that's what we have to do, not even just on the juvenile level, but on the adult level.
So let me ask this question. We got questions in prior to this Lunch and Learn today. People submitted questions to us. And I was very encouraged by the nature of a lot of the questions because it really appears as people want to truly understand more about this system. But even more than that, I think the vast majority of questions centered around what can I do? What can we do as a community or as a women's organization or as an individual? What can we do, A, to support you and your programs and what you're doing, and B, to support our youth? Because if they go through a restorative justice process, let's say, they arguably get a meaningful connection or relationship between the youth and the victim. But somebody like me who may not be a victim, and I'm far beyond the youth at this point, I'm removed from that process. So, what is it that we can do as individuals in the community, as groups in the community, to get involved with these youth, like you say?
The number one thing I always tell people that they can do is, first and foremost, educate yourself about the juvenile justice system. Educate yourself about what really is going on. Because if you were to look at the news every day and assume that everything that comes out of the news is, you would assume that we have a handful or a community of youth that are running the streets ragged and tearing down the town. It's kind of like back in the 90s when we termed our youth as these super predators. Every time I look at a news story and it talks about, ooh, we've seen this youth before, oh, this youth has done this again, it brings a different part of me out. And because I know our youth and I know what they're doing and what they're not doing. If you educate yourself, you will learn that between 2013 and today, 2019, or not today because we're in 2020, but our stats from 2013 and 2019 clearly show that youth crime has decreased 48.44%. Almost half of the kids that were getting in trouble in 2013 in Nashville, Tennessee are not getting in trouble. We arrested 4,715 youth in 2013. In 2019, we arrested 2,431. That's a number that we need to be proud about. And when I think about those numbers, another number that you don't hear about when you hear what these children are doing on the news. When I think about serious crimes, I think about murders, aggravated robberies, the crimes that rapes, guns, the crimes that really can cause serious bodily injury to people or death. The serious bodily injury cases, the serious cases, 449 youth were arrested last year for serious crimes in Nashville, Tennessee. 449. We have 86,000 students in our school system. When you think 86,000 students in our school system, 449 were involved, and these aren't even convictions, these are just arrests. So for only 449, that is less than 0.5% of our youth. So when you see news stories about youth crime and how horrible it is, question that. Call us. Call the Metropolitan Police Department and say, I want to see the Comcast stats, the data about the arrests and the convictions of the youth. And they're online. You don't even have to call them, but you can call them. They can tell you. But you can find them online, and it will show you that youth crime is down. And so that's the number one thing people can do, is to educate themselves. And then once you educate yourself, educate your neighbors, educate everybody around you. Tell people in your communities, talk about it, and don't be afraid to talk about it. Challenge people when they say, oh, that juvenile court, they're not doing anything. Challenge them and say, no, look at their website. Look at all these things that they're doing. Look at all these programs that they're providing for these kids. So do these things. And then you can also be a part of, there are so many different programs that you can always be a part of. And it depends on the time frame that you want to do. If you want to mentor a child, join CASA, or that is court appointed special advocates. If you want to, um, if you only have a few minutes, or you don't have a whole lot of time, you could be a part of the restorative justice circle, and they'll train you on how to do that. If you have more time, you could be a part of the foster care review board, that will make sure that all the children that are supposed to be getting services from the Department of Children's Services are getting everything they want. Go to the school system. If they open, when they open, go to the schools and be a part of just going and reading to children. That makes a difference in all of the children that we deal with. So be a part of a child's life. And if that doesn't work, like if you can't physically do it, and everybody can't do everything, you got to find what fits best for you. But there are so many nonprofit organizations and so many groups that we work with that need help with funding. So if you want to do something that you can't physically be a part of a child's life, you can't physically do the mentoring, you don't have the ability to do those kind of things, you do have the ability to give $5 to a group, or they might ask for 5,000. But whatever you can do, I'm sure no group would turn down any money. But there are a lot of organizations around our community that are giving their best to change and help them change the lives of children, and you can do that to be a part of as well. Adopt schools and be a part of a school, a organization, like Stephanie Elizabeth, you all, and Latanya, you came to me and said, we really want to start a book club with youth in detention. That's all you got to do. Just ask me, and I'll be like, oh yeah, let's do it, and we'll do it. Whatever that can be a benefit to our children, we will do the best that we can to make sure it happens.
So who is a good point of contact at the Juvenile Justice Center if someone wanted to just call and say, hey, I want to volunteer, help me find where I can be placed, or, what I can do? Who would that contact be, or what would that point of contact be?
So the main point of contact, I would say, would be the court administrator, and her name is Kathy Sinback. Kathy Simback, the court administrator, and I'm gonna give her a cell phone because she never minds. Although after the fact, and so I don't know if she minds or not. But her cell phone is 615-310-7132. That's 615-310-7132.
Perfect. So I'm going to take some of the questions that we have that people sent in advance. One of them is, what are the current resources to help youth who are detained maintain their education, and does MNPS provide these resources?
Yes, so there is a law that says all youth who are incarcerated are required to have some type of educational program. We are very fortunate to have worked with Metro Schools long ago to make sure that our students have the same school services that they would have at Metro. And so they have partnered with Chance Light Schooling. It's kind of like a charter school that's it's not a charter school, but I don't know. It's an MNPS school that's housed in our juvenile detention facility. They have counselors, they have a principal, they have counselors, they have teachers, they have special ed teachers as well, so that all of the youth they're on the same school schedule, but they're making sure that all of the students have the same opportunity. We have a lot of successes with our school. In the past 2 years, we've had 3 separate graduations where their principals of their zone school have actually come to the detention with their families and friends, and have actually had graduation ceremonies within the detention facility. And so we encourage the youth who are there to make sure that they are cooperating and doing the best that they can. They can catch up on credit recovery. They can do everything that they can within our detention facility for schooling.
And so we have a viewer who just posted a comment in the chat that's actually very similar to one that I was going to go to that was put given to us in advance. But the question is, last year the school board voted to have in-school programs to discipline children instead of sending them out of school, but the council did not fund it. Good luck on that this year with our budget issues we have going on. On Tuesday, the school board will vote to expand out-of-school suspensions. Teachers say they can't teach with students who are disruptive in the classroom. Is there a way the juvenile court can work with the school system to help work with youth to keep them in school for the discipline and work on the mental, emotional issues as well as the restorative discipline?
I absolutely love that question.
Great question.
It is an awesome question. It is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it is something that I am very concerned about in the direction that we may be headed with the decision about school discipline. And as I said, I guess when I was given the overview and why we have a Metro Student Attendance Center, there is absolutely no doubt, any study can tell you that youth who remain in school, active and engaged, are least likely to be a trouble to our community or to get arrested or to get in any type of trouble. We have a nationwide, including here in Nashville, we have a school to prison pipeline problem. And unfortunately, that problem also affects minorities more than anything. And it is very disproportionately used how we suspend and expel youth from our school system. Black kids are expelled at a super high rate. Back in 2014, because of the inequities of our discipline practices, we were part of a nationwide grant that chose five jurisdictions. I don't know if we were the absolute five tops, but there's 5 jurisdictions across the nation who had issues with disproportionate disciplinary practices. And we were one of those agencies. And so we joined PASSAGE, which is Positive and Safe Schools Advancing Greater Equity. And through our PASSAGE initiative, we accomplished a lot of good things. We had the support first from Jesse Register and then the super support from Dr. Joseph. And during that time period, there was a significant decrease in the number of students that were suspended. In the period from 2013-14 to 2018-19, the suspension rates went from 11,000 overall to 8,000. And the percentage of African-American students went from 19% down to 15%, and for Latinos, 8% to 6%. There were fewer suspensions of youth with disabilities. Yes, we still suspend youth that have disabilities, which is another thing that we have to work upon. Mm-hmm. And literally the instructional days that we were losing for our students was at 45,000 days that we were losing. And that went down to 30,000 days. The biggest stat that I like to talk about is that we worked really closely with the school system on not arresting youth from school 12 years and under. Yes, we arrest children 12 years old and under from our school systems. But when we did that, and from 2017 to 2018, when Dr. Joseph did a executive order from the school system that said that they could not, without prior approval from the administrative office, that went from a 73% decrease in the number of students that were arrested in 12 and under that were arrested in school, 73% decrease. And this took a lot of work between us, the courts, the Metro schools, the police department, the mental health co-op, the district attorney's office, Oasis Center, NOAA. We all were at the table all the time talking about these issues and really seeing a lot of good changes. And what happens is if you keep kids in school, then you don't have problems. You don't have issues with school safety. When I think about the case that I guess rocked Nashville and became the case that everybody talked about, especially on the news media, of the 5 youth who had allegedly killed the musician that was a Belmont graduate,
Yeah.
that was during the day, 5 students who were not in school.
Mm.
These are the cases that we have to work about. And so I am deeply concerned with the possibility that the school board on this coming up Tuesday is going to be voting on an initiative to backtrack all of the good work that we have done. And so what my understanding is that there's going to be an opportunity for the school system to increase the number of days that youth will be out of school if they get suspended. There's going to be a broader range of offenses that youth can get suspended for. For instance, if 2 kids are getting in a fight and they're like going at it and hitting each other, and a teacher steps in to interrupt them, what the passage group that included Metro's natural school people decided was that's not an intentional hit on the teacher. The teacher just unfortunately got in the middle of it and got hit, because when you're in the middle of a fight, you just swinging. You're not looking who you swinging at, you just swinging. And so that was not a suspendable offense. But now we're going to open that back up to allow that to be a suspendable offense. And that's troubling. And so what we know is when our schools get back to school, whether it's August, whether it's September, whenever we get through COVID, our youth have endured so much trauma. First, they had the tornado, and then they go back to school for 3 days after the tornado, and they're pulled back because of first spring break and then the COVID breakout. And they're they're attempting to do school for the next month or so, as much as they can by Zooms and WebEx and whatever. I think with Schoolology, which every kid didn't have access to.
Right.
So when we get back to school, our youth, and now you think about watching a murder of Mr. George Floyd and how our kids are affected by that. Yeah. So you think of all of the trauma that they have dealt with, and the tornado, the COVID, the just the no school, all of this stuff, and how it affects them. I'm gonna tell you what, it has affected me tremendously. And I'm an adult with most of the time, most people would argue, with a fully developed brain. Some that may argue differently. However, our youth don't have that and don't have the same coping mechanisms that we as adults have. And so my concern is that when we go back to school and they're faced with more disciplinary issues on the first day that they get back, that there's going to be more trauma. And so what we as a community need to do to support the school is figure out a way to put a moratorium on suspensions and expulsions, at least for a little while. Let people adjust, let the children adjust to going back to school. And we need to step up to support the schools, because we're not going to get more money for them. But if we know we have restorative justice, that we can train people, our restorative justice team can train people to go into the school and help them to do restorative practices. And so when a teacher has trouble with a child who's having a meltdown and they need to get them out of the room, that's okay. Let somebody who's from a volunteer place come to the school and be the restorative practice person for that day. And so that child can go into a restorative room with that person and be able to calm down. But we have got to stop, I guess, waiting on, we can't keep using the excuse of we don't have funding in order to make them best for our children. When I started as juvenile court judge, we didn't get any more money from Metro government to do all of the changes that we did. We had to use what we had. We had to reach out to people and say, can you provide these programs for us? We don't have any money to give you, but we will certainly give you the support, the room, whatever it is that you need, we will help you get it done. And that's what we have to do with the school system. They're not going to get any more money. We know that. We don't have any more money to give them, but they can have people from all walks of life to come in and support them and say, we don't want you suspending kids. We don't want you pushing kids out of the system. Instead, we want to be here to help you to do restorative practices, to do the things that we can to make a difference for our children.
So is it helpful or impactful for people to show up at that meeting, um, and say those things and make those presentations?
So I'm not sure how they're doing the meetings at this point. We actually were attempting to make a statement at the meeting because the passage group wanted to make sure that the school board understood our issues and our concerns about them passing this law without having an opportunity to have parent voice, without having an opportunity to have student voice, knowing how difficult this is going to be when they get back to the school, that they're not thinking, oh, now we can suspend longer or now we can suspend for more things, but they're instead doing more, how can we help these children to transition back into the school system? But we were told that that there's not going to be a public response or speaking. And I don't know if they're doing it by Zoom or WebEx or how they're holding that meeting. But if we can go there, people need to go there. People need to call your school board representatives. They accept phone calls. They accept email. I talk to Anna Shepherd a lot. Call your school board. She's my school board rep. But call your school board representative. Call all of them. You don't have to just call your one. Call all of them and tell them that you are concerned with the possibility of us going backwards on the progress that we have made with the school discipline issues.
So a couple of questions that are more for those activists that we've got tuned in. What policy decisions must be demanded by the people and supported by the appropriate local, state, and national leaders to improve the lives of our youth to accomplish the following? And the first prong to that is to improve the success rate of non-violent juvenile inmates to be released back into our communities and into our American society as contributing members of the human and global citizenry.
Well, let me start there, Stephanie, if I can. We do not need to be incarcerating non-violent juveniles at all. And so policymakers, we did a good job with the juvenile court reform law that was passed 2 years ago by the Tennessee legislature. It did some things that it needed to do. I don't think it went far enough to telling judges that we cannot do certain things. I think the judges across the state were not necessarily in favor of being told who they could and could not lock up. However, we got to keep pushing that. There is no need to lock up youth who are not a risk of safety to our community. It's not good for kids to steal things, and I'm never going to advocate that kids should commit crimes, nor do I advocate that they get a slap on the wrist. What I advocate for is that we do things that are appropriate to their brain development and appropriate to their rehabilitation. Locking a child up for a non-violent offense is more harmful than it does any good. There's an article that was written by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention that talked about the dangers of incarceration. And we do more harm to our youth, especially when their brains aren't fully developed, when we put them in settings of incarceration. So the number one thing that we need to do as a community is push hard for legislation that does not allow youth to be incarcerated for non-violent offenses.
And I'm gonna make a plug for Women's Political Collaborative. We, as I said at the beginning of this, we are absolutely very involved in what goes on up on the Hill. We have watchdogs that look at laws that impact our community, that impact our families, our mothers, youth, children, and families in general. And we make sure that things that are going through, that need to go through, that we are there in conjunction with other organizations and groups supporting those to make sure that legislation goes through. And Nancy Corley, one of our board members this week, stopped a bill that was going to have a negative impact on families in our community. And so we also work very hard at having a voice. So if you would like, I'm gonna say it again, join our organization, WPCTN.com, become active, become a financial supporter, just become a member, because we are involved in these things that make a difference in our community. I'm gonna ask another question, and I know we've got about 10 minutes, so we're gonna wrap up shortly, but I thought this was a good question. What keeps you up at night? What do you want to achieve in your position with these young people?
Um, when I think about what keeps me up at night, I have a 16-year-old son myself. I have a 16-year-old black male, and every day I look at him, he's taller than me. He's got hair on his face now, and he's got this deep, booming voice. And I consider my child growing up fairly privileged. He has never missed a meal unless he just slept through breakfast, which he's done all since March. He's he's never slept in a car. He's never um, had to figure out how to get somewhere. Everything he's had everything he's needed. He's never had to wear the same outfit the next day or the next day. He's never had to. Now has, but he's never had to. He has had a fairly privileged life. But I know as he's getting ready to drive and hang out more with his friends, um, when we look at the state of the world, no matter how privileged he is subject to being stopped, being arrested, and having things go badly. And that keeps me up at night. As much as that keeps me up, it keeps me up at night when I think about his privilege, and it still worries me. Most of the kids that I see on a regular basis don't have half of the things that my son has. They don't have a quarter of the opportunities that he has. And that's literally what keeps me up at night. I had the fortune to be raised by two parents in the same house who believed in education and believed in pushing their children. And my son has the same opportunity. 90% of the youth that I see on a regular basis do not have that. And that keeps me up at night. And so it is my, destiny to change that for all of our youth. They didn't ask to be here. They didn't ask to be born in the situation that they were born in. And I get frustrated, like when I hear about pro-lifers who talk to people about what they can and shouldn't do with their bodies. But in that same vote, you're not going to vote for some healthcare initiatives that will give that person who's forced to have a child, that give that person the opportunity to have healthcare to raise that child. You're not going to do the things, the social justice things that keep that child safe. And yet you're pro-life and you're going to vote for the ability for you and your people to carry guns everywhere, keep them everywhere, and keep them as unsafe as you want with no consequences. And so when my child, who's trying to find food or anything out of somebody's car just to make a living, just to make it to the very next day, and he finds a gun and he plays with it and he uses it and someone gets shot, they're going away for the rest of their life. And you tell me that you're pro-life and you didn't do anything to take care of that child. That's what keeps me up at night.
Mm-hmm. All right, one last question before we kind of wrap things up a little bit. And I think it's a great tie-in to the passion that we just saw. You have always led and walked with confidence that I admire, this particular person wrote, and I think we all admire that. I think that speaks for all of us. You did not allow yourself, your happiness, or your actions to be limited by the opinions of people. Have you always been this way? And if not, how did you learn to free yourself from the opinions of people? Because we know that you are in a seat where there's a lot of judgment cast on you. And I think that's a great question because it is so true. Like whatever it is that bothers you, we don't see that. We just see your strength, we see your smile, we see your passion, but we don't see you getting frustrated by the things that we might read in headlines or some of the criticisms that may come about. So tell us, where does that come from? How did you get, where do you get that from?
So I haven't always had it. When I was in school, when I was growing up, I was not very confident. I was not confident in who I was or, my looks. I just didn't have my fit. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer growing up, and I knew I wanted to advocate and help people. And it wasn't truly, I think, until I came to juvenile court back in 1998 that I found what was my passion. And, for me, it's about knowing your passion and knowing what you are here for. I am super spiritual. Love my temple church. And that part hurts me not being able to go to church every week. I get my strength from God. And I know that I have to do everything every day for what God put me here for. And it's not about pleasing man anymore. I think I went through that stage where I tried to please the people around me, but it's not about pleasing man. It's about pleasing God for me. And when you think about that, I know that I'm here for a reason and for a season. And so I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to get reelected or not. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen because I know God has me and is going to take care of me. So if I make a decision and the community's not happy with it and they decide we don't want that person to be the judge anymore, that's fine. I know God's got something better and bigger for me in a better way to be an advocate for our youth. And so I'm very confident in what God has placed me in and that God has put me here for this reason.
Well, thank you. And I think I speak for everybody when I can say that you're definitely a godsend to this community and the juvenile court system. And we're very thankful for you. I know we could go on, and I probably do want to revisit the opportunity to do this again and have a part 2 because there's so much more we can talk about. Before I close out with everybody, I want to let you know our next program that we're going to have, a lunch and learn that is also free to the community, will be next Wednesday, June the 10th. At 12 noon, and it's going to be about addressing health disparities now. So we've heard about it, we know it exists, we're ready to talk about it, and we encourage each and every one of you to join us for that. Again, thank you, Judge Calloway, and thank you for everything. Thank you for your time today, for your passion, your commitment. Thank you all for tuning in and joining and supporting this program. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. One other quick thing, this is actually going to be posted on our Facebook page. The Women's Political Collaborative's Facebook page is where you will find a video recording of this posted. So I encourage you to review it, to see what you missed, to share it. It should go viral. It should absolutely go viral. And thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.